Hi, I'm back, wearing a hat. Where have I been this week? Paris, Texas, maybe. God, that film's pretentious, don't you think? Actually, I was in Texas, West Texas, where the cowboys are, looking at an art town. Then East Texas, where the oil is, looking at an art chapel. Then Paris, avoiding the cakes, looking for an artist's house. In Nice, I walked on by some modern art sculptures that I didn't think were nice. Brixton, I went to an art gallery here. I was reading a book in Chelsea, New York. In all these places, I was looking at and thinking deeply about nothing.
In the world now, there are artists painting blank canvases, paintings of nothing. Because in modern art, shocks matter, beauty matters, but nothing matters too. Why does modern art endlessly return to blanks and emptiness, to nothing? There are abstractions, basically blank canvases without any imagery at all, throughout all periods. Do they mean the same in Russia in 1915, for example, as they do in New York in the 60s, or in London in the 1990s? When art is empty, is it about some kind of special void, different to ordinary emptiness? What do voids mean, anyway? This programme, now unfolding from this minimal white studio, is about modern artists making something out of nothing.
New York, the sublime sound of Lester Bowie. It can only be coming from one place, the studio of Robert Ryman. When he was young, Ryman was a museum guard during the day and a jazz trumpeter by night. In the 1950s, he started painting all-white paintings that were always square. Soon he became known as the artist who did that. R, that's his initial. Now there's a famous West End play called Art that satirises the idea of the all-white canvas. But the idea is different to the real thing. Already there's a lot going on, even though it doesn't mean anything. And it's right that it shouldn't. 98, the date. The edge, the surface, the white. A million different whitenesses refracted off these textured surfaces. Riffs on nothing. The best riffs there can be, maybe.
When I began, the square seemed to be the most perfect space to work with. And I more or less kept that. With the white, it was a matter of trying to make things more clear, actually. It sounds strange, maybe, but with white, you can see all of the details, all of the nuances, and the slight things that would be overlooked if it were a dark color. It seemed to please me to begin that way, but I don't know why.
I get the sense that you think the meaning is there in the physical material of it.
Yes, that's right.
There isn't a meaning somewhere else.
No, the meaning is
Why not?
Is what we see.
Most people want there to be a meaning somewhere else and a picture that refers to it.
Oh, there is. Well, there's the meaning of the experience of seeing it. Because when you see it, well, you hopefully you would have you would feel good. I mean, you would feel as if it was a maybe unusual or interesting or very pleasing thing to see. And so you would have you would want to maybe smile, or I think it's like that with all painting.
This is the first all-white painting of modern art, painted in 1915 by Kazimir Malevich, the Russian painter. He painted all black paintings too. It was suprematism, the art movement Malevich started. I think Malevich is marvellous because of his ambition for art. He wanted it to be spiritual. It was revolutionary, futuristic, spiritual abstraction. For Malevich, suprematism was like Russian icons, with all the ecstatic, super-religious, mind-blowing power of a picture of Jesus, only with the light coming off of a square instead of the face of the Redeemer. Malevich is all meaning, the deepest, profoundest, most spiritual meaning. There isn't much there otherwise. Squares filled in plainly. How can we know what spiritual really was for Malevich 70 or 80 years ago? It was a time when seances were still a craze, and when spiritualists used early phonograph recordings to imitate the voices of the dead. What about 20 or 30 years ago, the time when Mark Rothko was still alive? Rothko, the artist who wanted the experience of looking at his paintings to be a breakdown and cry experience. The blank redness of Rothko. There's not much to say about it. It's not the red of Matisse's Red Studio, but it's not that different either, except there's no studio in it, just the red. And the idea of Rothko's studio, gloomy, filled with Rothko's depression, his sense of tragedy. Rothko was appalled by a lot of modern art, the way it was going. When he passed Andy Warhol on the street one day, he had to turn away with a shudder. The sight was too horrible for him. He couldn't bear the pop glare. He wanted the murky void. And we've given him the job of being our tragic artist of nothingness. We will never say, well, this Rothko is maybe not much good. That one before was better. Weighing them up like that would be sacrilege, because that's the way we believe in Rothko, as somehow beyond reasonable understanding. Unless we don't like Rothko, in which case we say they're all rubbish and laugh at modern art. This is the Rothko Chapel in Houston, Texas. It was completed a short time after Rothko's death. It's a real chapel where people come and meditate and pray, even get married, or just crash out. The flotsam and jetsam of modern society, seeking a place to flop at a centre of vague, New Age religion, religion light. His paintings here are the grandest, darkest, blackest, most unfathomable ones he ever made. Bloody hell, they're black. Rothko said there's no such thing as a painting about nothing. The subject, he said, is crucial. And for him, the only subject was one that was tragic and timeless. Well, these paintings in the Rothko Chapel certainly are sombre, inky black, doomy black. Sometimes there's a faint border around the edges, sometimes not even that. So they're not paintings that draw you in. You're forced to think, well, what else is there here? Rothko divided up the paintings into triptychs and single huge works, suggesting supreme beings and holy trinities, maybe even symbolic crucifixions. And certainly this is a place where modern art has a definite use, and where the Koran and the Bible are the guides, not art catalogues.
Well, it was May 1975. I guess we chose to get married here because this was a place of contemplation, and I, for one, it was the second marriage for Carol. I wanted a place that didn't have a lot of frivolity and to do. I just wanted a nice, quiet, small ceremony, and we agreed that this would be a good place to have it. I think the thing I enjoyed most about it is the contrast with kind of the circus atmosphere that attends most weddings. I definitely wanted to get away from that.
Well, I felt it was a place where people could meditate and reflect, and in this way, what we said to each other would really stand out rather than the environment, or words would be important.
At the time, we would say, we're going to have our wedding at the Rothko Chapel, and people would say, oh, what a depressing place. Why would you want to have a wedding there? And I always had the opposite reaction to Rothko. I actually felt elation, because whether it was true or false, the rumor at the time was that Mark Rothko had executed these paintings shortly before his suicide. But when you look at the paintings, you actually see quite a bit more than depression and despondency.
Rothko is a Russian Jew who lived most of his life in New York. He wasn't religious, but he was given to making big pronouncements about the connection between modern art, the kind of art he made, and the awesome mysteries of religious belief. For a long time, that kind of talk and the pretentious discussions that surround the art of Rothko
and that attempt to explain it in terms of deep spiritual meaning seemed oppressive. Rather than making him a more sympathetic person, they make him a less sympathetic one. And the whole idea of the Rothko Chapel, where Rothko is supposed to be at his Rothkoist, dark, brooding, big, seemed a bit too much. But actually, when you come here, the effect is serious, it is stark, but it's not grandiose. It's simple, modest. You think, yeah, a chapel in the modern world. Rather than sneering, you think there should be more of them, more Rothko chapels.
Rothko committed suicide in 1970 by slashing his arms almost to the bone. His last paintings are artless and plain. We're asked to see them as Beckett-like visions of loneliness. They are part of culture, but not necessarily a part we're using much at the moment.